So I still haven't figured out exactly how this works. If we own nothing and we're happy, where does all of our current stuff go? Are there unhappy people who then have to deal with it? This whole thing seems complicated. Okay, so today we're going to talk about life as we know it. It's a big topic, I know. But if you watch a lot of videos on gold, you will inevitably drop into certain perspectives that tell us that we're about to go over a cliff. And some of them even seem to make sense because they're built on one underlying but clearly understood truth or another. Now, it might be something like the U.S. has surpassed $30 trillion in federal debt, and maybe it's the amount of currency in circulation. By now, you've probably heard somebody say that 80% of all U.S. dollars in existence were printed in the last 2 years. Now, that one is not true, but there are plenty of shocking facts. These perspectives, though, are coming from people telling us that we're on the verge of the Great Reset, or that we just got one step closer to the Great Reset, or that something has sped up the Great Reset. They're building around a popular narrative. And sometimes it started with the truth, but most of these kinds of tales, they have drifted very far from what's actually important. And I will go on record saying that a lot of bad things can happen that have nothing to do with the Great Reset. The idea of the Great Reset in this circle is that it's one big rug pull. The value of currencies will go to zero, and you'll be forced into a new model of life where you own nothing and you'll be happy. It's very foreboding. It has an overlord kind of feeling, Big Brother says, but inflation and debt and the stock market crash and all the bad stuff going on right now is not leading to Klaus Schwab running the world. Now, if you don't know that name, he's the head of the World Economic Forum. That's the group that came up with this idea. And this story that you're powerless to do anything but get your money out of the system because Klaus and his elite friends are coming after your dollars, well, that's no longer based on truth. It's actually several leaps away from that. Again, lots of bad things can happen that don't result in us moving toward this Great Reset world with all of us living happily in government housing, all of us having to have a tattoo to pick up our food rations. Seriously, how likely do we think it is that humans are just going to go happily into that kind of system? Now, the important thing here is to consider where the information is coming from. Mike Maloney, he's somebody that a lot of people follow. He just posted a video titled Alert: How the Russian Gold Ban Speeds Up the Great Reset. Now, Mike is a calm, articulate speaker. He had some charts in his video as well, and I did not catch the part about how any of what he was saying actually leads to the Great Reset. So it's possible that either I missed it or I forgot it. Both are possible, but most likely he just picked that title because it's popular. And you should know that Mike's business is goldsilver.com. So while he's calmly telling us that the dollar is dying and one event or another is speeding that along, and that the only thing we can really do is stock up on gold and silver, we need to remember that his business is selling you gold and silver. Another similar story is about a new world order. Now, this is the idea that the world reserve currency is constantly in flux if you look at a long enough timeline. And that makes sense. Eventually, the US dollar will be dethroned. That is not a hard concept to swallow. But it's often used interchangeably with this Great Reset idea. But that is not what it is. And the idea that Russia can still trade with non-G7 nations does not mean that we're going to a gold standard or a new world order. But that last part would at least be using new world order correctly. A new world order would be a changing world order. And that's the way that Ray Dalio puts it. I think that's a lot more descriptive and that's a lot less ominous sounding. It's more about competition and progress, and how that competition and progress eventually leads to a change in the preferred reserve currency. That's not predicated on a rug pull, and there are a lot of different ways that this could happen. Maybe a new currency basket could be used as a reserve, and that would be like an anchor currency for international trade. So it wouldn't be any specific currency, it would actually be a group of them. But then once again, that does not mean that your dollars are worthless. It just means that they are not the preferred world reserve currency. And every time I say something like this, I get one or two people who jump in and say that I'm just missing something. That's fine. You can think that if you want. Here is why I'm saying it. You can actually do something about a market crash. You can plan and you can do things so that you come out ahead. But that idea that a great reset is coming and we're just plotting at a point on the line of it actually happening, well, that's just dumb. If you want to plan for that, for looming chaos, that's fine. I'll never say that planning for the worst is dumb. I'll just say that the people telling you that the dollar is about to go away, well, they're either selling you something or they just heard something they liked and they think that you might like their version too. As far as buying gold goes, because that's why we're here, even with gold nearing $1,800 today, we're still in the midst of a strong cycle for gold. There are solid cases for it going to $2,500 this cycle. Goldman Sachs actually has their 2022 price target set there. So they're talking about this year. And then I just heard that same case from an individual. They were talking about $2,500. Honestly, I don't know what the timeline was, but this cycle, and they had nothing to sell. They aren't a coin dealer. They aren't a silver and gold investment broker. They're just giving a strong look at what is happening with rates, with bond returns, and with other economic signals. And they're saying that as soon as the real rates go neutral, we're in a better environment for gold again. Well, if the Fed does what everybody thinks they'll do and they raise the rates 75 basis points again in July, we're there. We're neutral. So if your plan is to buy gold to park some wealth, and that plan is based on realistic cycles, well, you will accumulate differently than you might if people are trying to scare you, telling you that this Klaus guy is coming for your nice things. Now, Western cultures are built around competition, they're built around progress, and the World Economic Forum's Great Reset idea does not work around that idea. You will own nothing and you will be happy. That is not about competition, that's not about progress. What if you own a small business? Do you think the government wants to own your business instead? No, the World Economic Forum, they don't want it either. Klaus doesn't want to own your business. He doesn't know what to do with it. And Western governments, they want your tax dollars because the harder you work, the harder you compete, the more you potentially owe in taxes. And that system is not going away. So somebody just told me not to bet against the US, and I think this applies to any Western country. I think it's a good reminder. I also think that it was an interesting comment because the person saying it is not even a US citizen. So as far as the price of gold goes, we did see a dip today, and that's going to have a certain feeling, but it is doing what it's supposed to do overall. I know a lot of us have probably bought a gold coin or three for a price higher than today's spot price of gold, and that's not a fantastic feeling, especially if you were buying that with money that you needed for next month's rent. And double, especially if you were pushed along with one of those stories about the Russian gold ban speeding up the Great Reset, something like that. Now, the reality here is that gold has actually been doing really well. It has been a good place to park some wealth. It's been a great savings model. And there are a lot of reasons why it makes sense that don't require the world falling into chaos to pay off. You just have to remember that it's not a short-term investment. If you want an interesting stat that truly is based on fact, well, I'll give you two. For all of the problems that we have, the first one is that the US dollar is at its highest level in 20 years. That's if we're comparing it to other major currencies. Now, we were just talking about how the ruble has bounced back, but the US dollar is doing much better. And since I'm comparing USD to rubles, if you were to look at Russia's GDP, it's a little bit less than $1.5 trillion. The US GDP in comparison is $21 trillion. So this idea that China wants the US to fail and wants to build a new world order alongside Russia, which is kind of a constant story around here, well, that would mean that China is hoping that their biggest customer fails. The US economy is about 14 times larger than Russia's. And you can use that stat however you'd like. So let's look at the most likely stories and then plan around that. What's most likely right now is that we're already in a recession, that real rates are probably going to be neutral as soon as this month, gold is going to continue to be strong, and that life will continue to go on. All the economic problems that we're dealing with right now, they're things that we can see, they're not ambiguous, they're things like debt, overspending, inflation, etc. It's not some guy in a skin suit forcing the entire world into an ultra-socialist reset. So yeah, get yourself some gold and silver, but get it on your terms. Don't get caught up in the nonsense. There's just better stuff to focus your attention on. So I think that covers it today. Hit us in the comments, let us know what you think. And then while you're there, be sure to hit that like button. If you found any of this interesting, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. If you want to see more on the topic, and if you're still here, thank you again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.